Hi folks, Tom Coy here with Ann Arbor Police Department's Arbor Shield. And today we have an episode I think you will enjoy. Well, I know you will, because I know my guests are going to enjoy it, right? Yes. First guest over here is Jennifer Babycz. She is a probation officer with 15th District Court, dealing a lot with the drunk driving offenses and subsequent sanctions for that, as well as obviously probation officer roles. To my right is Judge Joe Burke, who sits on 15th District Court and again deals with the drunk driving court, and I've sat in that courtroom as a transport officer when I have to share this story, Judge, if you don't mind.
Well, let's wait and see what the story is.
So we're transporting, and somebody arrived into your court. I know I always tell the story, but somebody arrived into his court like an hour late, and the judge wears glasses occasionally, not that you need them, sir, but
No.
Occasionally, and he took them off, and I thought to myself, yes, the judge will drop the hammer on this individual. And I've noticed that that was kind of your, when the glasses came off, it was kind of.
I will remember not to wear the glasses whenever I play poker, because apparently it's a tell.
I was going to say, it is a giveaway. But anyhow, I appreciate you both being here, taking the time.
Thanks for
I know
having us.
It's not everybody's gig, and sometimes it's not mine either. So before we get to that, I would like to share a personal story, if I could. And then I'll let either one of you comment on it, if you feel the need to do so. So today, we were, my partner and I were out and trying to save face with everybody that we were interacting with. But we were talking to a segment of the population, and suddenly, out of nowhere, comes an elderly lady into my face saying, what were we doing, and how, essentially, how dare we be circulating this photo of this person that we were asking folks if they knew. And unbeknownst to her, the reason for us circulating the photo was that this person had been reported as endangered missing and had a brain trauma. And we had words. I spoke to her on the side. And my question to her was, why are you so adversarial with the police, not knowing anything about why we're here or what we're trying to accomplish? And you would think after doing this for 28 years, I would just kind of be, I guess, numb to that. But it really takes me back when there is that kind of adversarial, I don't want to say hatred, but certainly an adversarial position with the police, when most the police I know, good officers, look at our role as guardians and protectors of society. And we can argue all day long if that's the majority or the minority of the police population. Obviously, I believe it is a slim minority. But anyhow, I wanted to share that, get that off my chest. After all, it is Ann Arbor Police Department show, so to speak, so I thought I'd throw that out there. Judge, do you have any comments on what I just said with regard to that before we digress too far?
Only that I think there's always a healthy amount of skepticism about authority. I mean, people can't just accept everything that's thrown their way, but what we've seen is there's always a pendulum, and it's swinging in one direction or another. If you think back to September 11th, 2011, or I should say September 12th, 2011, everybody everywhere was getting their picture taken with a cop. They're handing their babies to cops.
That's true.
They would do whatever a cop or anybody in uniform told
That's
them
true.
to do, and then as time went on, some people started moving away from that and becoming more skeptical, and then I think you'll get that pendulum to go so far that people are irrationally skeptical. Or just anytime they see an officer, what are you doing standing on the sidewalk?
Right.
Well, I have the same right to be here as you.
Right.
Is the answer.
Right. No, the whole 9/11. I would agree with that. That's an interesting perspective. Jen, what do you think?
You know, it's nice that we're talking about sobriety court today, because that's the program that I work for and that the judge runs. But and I'm sure we'll dive into it, but once people know about our program and go through our program, and people that have knowledge of the program know that the police are not out to get them in this
Yeah.
program, probation isn't, the judge isn't, and people usually come in with the sense that that might be the case. But we in this program are here to help people, and so it's nice to tie that in and know
Yeah.
that that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, no, that's a good comment. Well, having said all that, sorry about the digression, folks. I take full responsibility for that. Judge, we'll start with you. Can you give us a little bit of synopsis maybe on how you got to be where you are today and what you did before that?
I tell anybody who asks, I won the employment lotto in 2012, but I started out after law school working in the prosecutor's office here in Washtenaw County under Bill Delhay, who had been here for a long time. And I worked here for 4 years where I met Brian Mackey and we became friends, but then I left and I was in private practice for 6 years doing criminal defense and any other type of general law that you can think of. When Brian Mackey became prosecutor in 1993, I went back to the prosecutor's office. So I have a combined 23 years prosecution experience. I had 6 years in private practice, and then in February of 2012, I was fortunate enough to be appointed by the governor to fill a vacancy in the 15th District Court.
Okay, excellent. Okay, John?
So my undergrad degree is in criminal justice from Eastern, but I've always worked in positions that had a social work spin. So I've always been very interested in the corrections aspect of the criminal justice system. So I initially met Judge Burke when I worked for the prosecutor's office doing victim witness advocacy, and I did some juvenile probation work for the juvenile diversion program there. Worked for the 15th District Court previously, did Children's Protective Services investigations for the state of Michigan for 5 years prior to starting here and coming back to work under Judge Burke for sobriety court last March.
Wow. Well, obviously you both have extensive, I like to say wisdom. That's not a word you hear too much any day, but you both have a lot of wisdom in the arenas in which you find yourself. And again, what we had done is a previous show I had on was a police officer who, I don't want to say enjoyed, but excelled in making drunk driving arrests. And there were reasons for that we talked about on the show. And with him was an individual called Keith, who I met at Starbucks. I rarely am there. Occasionally I am there. And we had got to talking, and he shared that he was on his 3rd or 4th drunk driving arrest, I believe it was, before, you know, the epiphany hit him that something had to change in his life because he had just run out of everything, all resources, all people, and kind of painted himself into a corner. So what we're going to do is take you know, our conversation today in the studio and attach it to that. But as I commented to the judge not too long ago, that my conversation in studio and at Starbucks with Keith was fascinating because I had just obviously never seen the world through the perspective of an alcoholic's eyes, and that essentially alcohol isn't the issue. You know, I mean, it's the court system, or it's the probation officer, or the judge, or the police officer, or your mom, or whatever it is. And I guess of everything that we talked about that day, it was a very interesting perspective to me. You know, because in the role of law enforcement, we often say, you know, why would you participate in this, knowing that? But when you look at it like, well, you remove the cause, wow, that leaves a whole different world. You know, if you're going to look at everything else but the cause of it, then it made sense to me. But anyhow, another tangent, 2 tangents today. My guests have had nothing to say whatsoever. Judge, let's start with this, and I'll ask the same question of you, Jen, but why, or let's put it a different way, why would you take a personal interest in sobriety court?
Well, I'm old, and I've seen a lot in the criminal justice system. When I started in the prosecutor's office in 1984, it was 1982, very different time. It was not unusual at all for professionals at lunchtime go out, have a couple of drinks, go back to work. get a little cocktailed up at the end of the day, certainly on Fridays, get in your car and drive, and it was kind of an accepted thing. And then, you know, there was a bunch of mayhem that came from that. As I got older and older, I started looking at what's going around. I like to tell people I'm homeschooled in substance abuse counseling and all. I come from a very large Irish Catholic family, and you can infer whatever you would like to from that. But at any rate, I've seen that for many people, for most people, alcohol is not a problem. They can pick it up, they can put it down. They can make wise decisions about alcohol. But for a segment of the population, around 20%, alcohol is not something that they can so easily pick up and put down. It will always be their choice whether they pick it up or put it down, but some people just, because they're alcoholic, have a whole different brain chemistry about it and how it affects. And so when I was younger and I saw all this stuff going on, and when I became a prosecutor, I was a lock 'em up, throw away the key kind of guy. I mean, I was a tough guy.
Sure.
But what we saw over the years is that you can put people in jail for so long. If they get out and they're drinking and they're driving again, what have you really accomplished except to protect society for about 93 days or whatever you could? And so that the real way to get at this stuff was to go to root causes, to stop, to intercept the alcoholism where you can, and in that way to protect the rest of the public, and in the meantime do something that makes you feel pretty good.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense, actually. And I think criminal justice, I mean, been doing this long enough that I think, you know, criminal justice at one time had the thing that you were talking about. It's a crime and punishment kind of thing. Who was written by? What was that book written by?
Tolstoy.
I knew you'd
Tolstoy.
know that.
I read that in high school, my senior year in high school.
Never got to it, but I know it is.
I saw the cover of the book.
Okay. Okay. Anyhow, so crime and punishment, but it does make a lot
I'm
more
gonna get you
sense.
that for Christmas.
It does make a lot more sense if, right, we go after the cause. I mean, one of the things, I don't want to get sidetracked here, but the mental health course also deals with that. You know, if you have somebody who is mentally ill, repeating the same crimes over and over and over, yeah, I mean, we can throw them in jail and throw them in jail and throw them in jail. We can write them tickets, but essentially, how do we deal? So, no, I appreciate what you said. Sorry. Okay, Jen, same question with regard to why sobriety court for you?
Kind of like what I was explaining, it's the perfect mix for me because it's important for me in the work that I do to help people, and that's what we do in sobriety court. So I know we're going to talk more about the program, but there's genuine connections that happen with our clients, and this is not just something where people come in and turn in community service hours and, you know, check a box. We talk about real life issues. We talk about what's going on with people. They know about my life. I know about theirs. We share things. We hug. There's tears.
Yeah. Cool.
There are people that have called it foo-foo love court.
I don't hug.
No, you don't hug.
I've heard rumors, but anyhow, right.
So for me, it's very fulfilling work.
Okay. And if you don't mind, I was going to go to the judge, but I'll come
Yeah.
back to you. So let's talk about the program itself, if you will, and each aspect that each of you are responsible for, and what's the question I wanted to ask? That ultimately, what is the goal of sobriety court with regard to your role and what we're trying to ultimately achieve with sobriety court versus conventional court over here?
I'll throw it back to the judge here in a second. I mean, our ultimate goal for sobriety court is that people will not reoffend and not drink and drive again. We have a more global picture in terms of each of our clients and the recovery community as a whole, because we really just want them to be healthy. So we don't only address addiction, and I think the majority of our clients are alcoholics, but we do have some heroin addicts and other things, people on our caseload that are struggling with different forms of addiction. But with that, there are people who are struggling with serious mental health issues that haven't been addressed, family trauma from childhood that hasn't been addressed, other things, lack of education, many, many issues. So everyone comes with their own personal story, and we treat everyone, you know, everyone has the same rules, but everyone also is treated as an individual. So there's different needs. And I'm not sure where I lost the question in that, but.
It was a great answer.
Okay, so
Okay.
so our goal, I guess that's what you were asking, and the judge can talk more about it, but we want people to be healthy and successfully complete probation. One of the things that I tell people when they come in for initial screening, I'm not here to set you up or trick you, and I know that people have that mindset, like
Yeah.
I have to, my probation officer's out to get me. No, I want you to succeed. Like the reason I'm asking you these questions, the reason I'm digging deeper is because we want you to be healthy, and it's going to take time. But I think that's
Which brings up an interesting, I kind of do this on the fly, folks, if you haven't noticed, but I think that's good. So I'm transporting a couple of guys from the jail to the courtroom. I don't think it was sobriety court, but I heard the conversation, and the one said to the other, so if they give you a choice between probation and doing the 30 days, which one are you going to take? And the other guy, I'm assuming, was somewhat of a veteran because he spoke like a veteran. And he said, you kidding me? I'll do the 30 days. I'm not getting involved in that probation stuff. Mm-hmm. So before I go to the judge, that comment, and you know, for our audience's perspective, you would think the average person would be like, yeah, I'll take the probation. I mean, no jail. I'll go for the probation. Why would this gentleman say, I'll do the 30 days?
Well, something that the judge says all the time to clients that are coming in, jail is easier. Yeah. So we ask a lot of our clients. I mean, this is not just, again, we're not checking boxes. This is a lifestyle change that we are asking them to make, that we are helping them make, but it's serious, and there are a lot of requirements to our program, a lot of expectations, and it's not just going to AA every day. It's a lifestyle change. So I hear him say all the time, jail is the easy route.
Yeah.
You're going to get in, you know when you're going to get out, you're going to get 3 square meals, and you can bide your time. So one of the things that we ask of our people is they have to be willing to be ready to change, and that's why we do a screening process before we even, it's a voluntary program, so the judge never orders anyone into sobriety court. They have an option. And I always meet with people beforehand and lay it all out on the table. These are going to be the expectations. A, B, and C could happen, or D, which I don't even know what D is. You have to be open for whatever's coming your way, but it's only going to be to help you. None of this is going to be punitive, and it's all about helping you get better.
I like what you said about the lifestyle change. You know, that makes a lot of sense when you frame it like that, versus these are the hoops you're going to go through. Because I remember what the last show we were talking about here, that Keith commented to me that the number of times he had to get involved in probation, immediately it was interesting. His frame of mind was, all right, these are the things I need to accomplish before I can start drinking again. To me, it was huge. It was, can't say I totally get it, but to some degree. Anyhow, Judge, all you, sir.
Yeah, so the short answer to what are the goals is safer streets. We want fewer drunk drivers on the streets injuring people, injuring themselves. The way we try to accomplish it, when I say we, sobriety court is a concept that's been around since the early 2000s. I think it was started in Florida. Here in this county, Judge Julie Creel, my predecessor, started this sobriety court in 2007. I inherited a very well-running sobriety court. But the best way, there are best practices manual. What we're really doing is taking a very intensified form of probation, and we make an assessment at the very beginning. The first thing you have to decide is, I'm not going to treat every drunk driver the same, because somebody who has gone 40 years of driving and never had a ticket goes to his neighbor's wedding, gets too drunk, gets behind the wheel of a car, gets pulled over speeding, and has a blood alcohol content of 0.11 is different from the young woman who's on her second drunk driving when she's 24 years old. And so we have assessment tools. There are different surveys, if you will, that the probation agent will take of the people, but generally most of our people self-select by picking up 2 drunk drivings in a short period of time. And then what we've decided is that, when I say we, what the criminal justice system has decided that uses this approach is that all of our resources are precious. Jail is a precious resource. Probation's a precious resource. Certainly substance abuse treatment's a precious resource. Mental health treatment. The courtroom can be a precious resource. We don't need to waste those precious resources on the large majority of people who are not problem drunk drivers and who will not be recidivist drunk drivers. We need to spend that time. Sobriety court consists of somewhere between 50 and 70 people, depending on what month you're looking at the case. And the normal caseload is probably more like 300. And so this is a fairly small subset, but they get very intensified attention. And if it works, it does result in a lifestyle change. And we don't change anybody. They change themselves. We provide a lot of tools to help them through the change, and sometimes those tools are carrots, and sometimes those tools are sticks.
Yeah,
But
that makes sense.
that's what we're hoping for.
Okay. And lest I forget, and that's usually what I do is forget, because my wife reminds me so often of so many things. But, you know, I haven't had anybody in my personal life that I'm aware of, nor have I struggled with any kind of substance abuse. But I have to say I have a great deal of respect for those who I have met over the last year in a number of circumstances, probably because I'm in community engagement, that are dedicated to their sobriety. And I can only empathize to a small degree because I haven't struggled with that, but their dedication to sobriety and all the things that it encompasses and a lifestyle change, I just want to put that out there, that I have a great deal of respect and admiration for those folks. And
I think you're in the minority if you don't know anyone personally that.
no, I'm
has been-
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. You know what? I'm sure that there are. I'm just not aware.
Right.
Right. But you're right. You're right. I mean, there are CEOs, as we're talking, of very good corporations that are alcoholics. And so let's, now that you've opened that can of worms, Jen, it's your fault.
Sorry.
Kidding. Comment on that a little bit. You know, when I make a comment like that, you know, a lot of us envision somebody like Otis from Andy Griffith. Andy Griffith, sir?
Yes,
Okay,
I
Andy
remember.
Griffith? Oh, come on, Jen,
Sorry.
please,
This is the second
man.
time today.
Barney Fife, Andy Griffith,
All right.
Otis
well,
was the town drunk.
yes. So they were always throwing
Got it.
Otis in jail. And there is that stereotypical image of an alcoholic, right? That's what an alcoholic is, falling down, blah, 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 blah. So I guess what we're talking about, and this isn't my area of expertise, but a functioning alcoholic, right? Highly functioning, somebody
Right.
who's you know, driven, is very successful, but they're an alcoholic. Give me a portrait, give me a definition, give me something that would fit what I'm trying to so inadequately say to the audience, that your stereotypical image of what an alcoholic encompasses is
It just
not
doesn't exist. Yeah.
Okay, so comment on what we are talking about when we're saying an alcoholic. That
I mean, there are no racial boundaries, there are no class boundaries. We have as young as 18 in our program, all the way up to, I'm not sure what our oldest participant is right now or has been, but people who are well into adulthood. And addiction can affect everyone, and that's just the truth. So, you know, that stereotype that you're talking of,
Yeah.
obviously those stereotypes do exist for a reason, because there are alcoholics who might look that way, but addicts come in all shapes, sizes, and colors.
let's and I rarely get to these questions I ask because I always find the conversations of my guests, to be honestly, fascinating enough that when they say something, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting, and then so. Some judge or both of you can comment on this. What is and we're just talking typical, and I understand there's no typical anything, especially in police work, but can I use high functioning alcoholic? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Or is there a better? Okay, so a high functioning alcoholic, a successful high functioning alcoholic, when they finally come to your attention in your court, what is that like, that situation, versus someone who has had, you know, a long history of life-damaging things, you know, no job, and all the things that we typically associate with alcoholism. You see, am I making sense here?
Right. We see people at all different points on the spectrum, if you will. I mean, every alcoholic, if they continue to drink enough, is just going to kill themselves. I mean, your body just can't handle that much. It takes a while, but your body can't handle that much alcohol over a lifetime. Liver damage gets done, brain damage gets done, lots of things get done, and it's what happens along the way that brings people into court. When I first started, we had a young woman in court. Everybody thought, oh, she just got in the wrong courtroom, was functioning wonderfully. When my bailiff went to talk to her, he smelled a little alcohol in her, did a PBT, and she was blowing a .26. I mean, this is just, for anybody else in the public, this is fall down, fall asleep, throw up drunk. And she was walking and talking and moving, so what that means is that she's way along the spectrum. She's very deep into alcoholism, and she's still functioning, but it's just a matter of time before something happens where she can't function anymore. We see people who are closer to the beginning and can't hold jobs, don't have the other native talents, I guess it would take, to cover up for what alcohol's doing to them, or get caught, and it's, they're the same people. You know, for all the golf fans who exist, when I was a kid, Tom Watson was the best golfer out there. I mean, he was just ripping it up, and they called him Huck Finn because he was, he looked so much. Well, he's very open about it now that in his playing days, he would just go home every night and fall asleep drunk. He was a raging alcoholic, yet he could play professional golf. His family knew, his kids knew, his wife knew, you know, and so it's horrible, but he was able to hide it from the rest of society. And so I can't give you a stereotypical alcoholic, because we've seen millionaires and we've seen destitute people. It just...
That makes sense. So I'll put it to you, Jen, and I think as the judge was talking, I think I got a better grasp of the question. How is it that, I think the judge said, are able to compensate in some way for their alcoholism better than this person over here? You see what I'm saying? Why is it you have a CEO over here who is a raging alcoholic, and you have an alcoholic over here who can't hold a job, lost his license? Obviously there's a compensation there, or something, or that makes that difference in their two lives, that most people would point to the Tom Watsons and say, there's no way this guy's an alcoholic. It can't be. Versus the person over here who you point to and you say, he's an alcoholic, forget about it.
I think that's just a lack of education about what alcoholism is. And I'm no doctor, so I don't want to comment on why alcohol might affect someone differently, but it does. And again, there's a multitude of other issues that can go along with people struggling with it, and mental health is a big one that we see and affects a lot of people. And I mean, everyone's life takes a different course. So
well, let me just say, and it also is a genuine physical condition. It is a disease, and people don't have any trouble understanding, for instance, that heroin is this very addictive drug, because they've seen it, they've read about it. They know that people go through withdrawal if they don't have it. And so what addiction is in heroin is that when you stop ingesting or injecting the drug, your body craves it so much that it becomes physically sick. The same thing happens with alcohol. People don't recognize it, but that's what a hangover is. And you know, for the people who aren't really addicted, the hangover is just kind of the vestiges of what's left over. When you see people who have the shakes until they have their alcohol, or who have headaches or are very irritable until they have their alcohol, those are people who are physically addicted to alcohol. And along the way, what happens is their tolerance for alcohol becomes higher and higher and higher and higher. And so somebody with a blood alcohol content of a 0.15 or a 0.17 could appear to you and me like a totally sober person, whereas a first-time drinker who has a blood alcohol content of 0.06 is going to be slurring her speech and drooling and that sort of thing. So when I'm in my other regular drunk driving court and I see somebody who has a blood alcohol content of 0.18, and the only reason they got pulled over is because they had a tail light out, I'm thinking, there's a practiced drunk. There's somebody who is well on their way to alcoholism if they're not there already. So some people function with it better, but like it's ultimately, it's inescapable that people will find out, because you'll either die or you'll just become so non-functional. And what happens at the end with acute alcoholism is they just can't do anything but drink, and then their body shuts down.
So you would both agree, I assume, I think all three of us would agree, that though you may escape the concept, or you think, I should say that, you think you're escaping the consequences of alcoholism, be it the criminal justice system or something else, that sooner or later, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Is that accurate or no? I mean, matter of if, but when.
Yeah, at some point you'll get caught or do something, or your family just won't put up with it anymore because somebody knows that it's going on. You know, I guess some people could just go and drink by themselves and nobody would know, but that seems like a very rare situation to me. But it's a very debilitating drug.
I remember in grad school, one of our instructors said, alcohol is the only withdrawal that will kill you. That is to say, if you're an alcoholic and you stop drinking cold for whatever reason, and you're high enough on the continuum that you will die as a result of just cutting it off versus any other drug. I remember that, and I don't know, never double-checked it.
I think it requires more monitoring than, say, heroin withdrawal. And I know you know from your transporting days at the jail when you found some people in their white outfits in the jail hospital because they're undergoing detoxification from alcohol, and they have to be watched.
Yeah.
I think they use phenobarbital to help them, and other things to, if they just let them withdraw, true alcoholics, if they just let them withdraw without any monitoring, it could kill them.
So we got about 10 minutes left, looks like. And I'm getting to very few of these questions, very few. But nevertheless, I appreciate you both being here, and I am learning a lot, and I hope you folks are too. So as you look at your career thus far with regard to, let's just talk about alcohol, the effect on the clients that you both have dealt with over your careers, in one sentence, what resonates with you out of all that experience, all those years, and alcohol with regard to the people that you've dealt with and are dealing with? What are you left, one sentence, to say with regard to those interactions, that is the alcohol and the person? Anything?
Mine would be that the criminal justice system has figured out how to deal with this.
I like that. Makes sense. Jen, there's a lot of pressure on you right
There
now.
is.
I-
I'm
and I
going to
took the
go with
easy
what
one.
you
Your
said. No,
answer
I'm
is the
sorry, but
18th
that
hole.
sounds perfect.
Okay. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense to me also. So I will try to ask some of these questions lest I forget. I was, in preparing for the show, I went online to see if I could find some blogs that would address drunk driving. That is to say, I was, assuming that if I was arrested for drunk driving, I'd go online and I would find these interesting blogs on how to beat a drunk driving arrest. And what I found was a lot of advertising for drunk driving attorneys. That's what I found, a lot of them. And to be honest with you, there were some decent blogs in there, but most of them were a little left of center. It was kind of like, give me a call and we'll chat about it, meaning cha-ching is what it means. But there are a lot of myths surrounding drunk driving arrests in driving while intoxicated that I think probably all of us could relate to, and how to beat the system. In your individual roles, I wonder if you could comment with regard to a drunk driving arrest. That is to say, a report that's well written and so forth, all the things that you would want in place. And what happens, through your experience, with a drunk driving arrest, be it one end or the other. We talked a little bit off camera about Keith, who was here last time, and again, I do appreciate you being here, Keith, that he saw it as, you know, a drunk driving arrest. The problem wasn't the alcohol, it was the police officer, and then it was just a matter of managing the different obstacles that were put in his place by the criminal justice system, and then he would resume his drinking after that. So that was one aspect. And then you talk to other folks, and I have, and there is something defining about that moment when they're arrested, you know, their wife, their husband have to come and bail them out, all the different things that surround a drunk driving arrest, and there is a change, not because of the drunk driving arrest itself, probably, I'm sure, but that there is an epiphany there. I'm not making much sense, and I'm going to blame it on the Sudafed I took earlier, but anyhow. So maybe you could just, each of you, comment on the drunk driving arrest as a catalyst or not with those folks you deal with.
Yeah, I mean, if someone's an alcoholic, if they're lucky, and most of them are, a moment of clarity comes at some point, and they think to themselves, this is not a way to live, this is a way to die. I have to stop doing, every time I've been in trouble, it's been because of alcohol, and I have to do something. And then if they're lucky, they find a friend or somebody else who can show them what needs to be done. But everyone who's alcoholic, before they get to that moment of clarity, are more full of resentment and anger and oh, I'm so unlucky. I can't believe I've been caught 3 times drunk driving. That is so unfair. Well, they've probably driven 300 times drunk driving, and these are the 3 times they got caught. And it takes a while to figure out that it's not luck. You know, we didn't just pull your name out of a hat. You were swerving down the street, or you ran into the back of somebody, or maybe you were unlucky and somebody ran into you and the officer found out you were drinking. But what are you doing drunk behind the wheel of a car? So before you get to that moment of clarity, it's just all denial. It's not me. I drink because my spouse makes me angry. I drink because the people at my workplace are so unfair to me. I drink because life has been terrible to me and other people are moving forward and I'm staying here and it's just not fair. So I'm going to drink. And there's all sorts of excuses to drink, and until the denial goes away, it won't stop. And now one of the things we do see, though, in the criminal justice system, and especially in sobriety court, but sometime in the regular drunk driving court too, is in sobriety court definitely, sometimes in just regular drunk driving court, I will make a term of their probation that they attend some 12-step meetings, maybe even get a sponsor depending on what they're doing. And everybody starts out resistant, reluctant, defiant. You know, they go to those first few meetings thinking, okay, judge told me I have to go, so I'm going to go. And nobody goes to their first meeting because they woke up one morning and thought it would be a good idea to go to a 12-step meeting. They go because a judge made them, a wife made them, an employer made them, something made them. And then the hope is that after a few meetings that they start networking, finding out from other people what's going on, and get the other help they need to, whether it's psychological or medical, and that they move along from there.
Okay, for those of you who are wondering about the change in clothing, it's a very long, detailed story that no one would be remotely interested in. So we're just going to continue the interview we've been doing. All right. So
Outfit changes are important on television.
yes, well, I'm sure the audience cares as
Right.
well. All right, so let's cut to a very important thing that we're going to add on to here, and that is maybe you could come up with a couple success stories with regard to what you do in probation within the sobriety court.
So we really measure our success in sobriety court, and I know if the judge was here right now, he would say this, in terms of people not reoffending and not drinking and getting behind the wheel again. But we have success stories all the time. People contact us years later and let us know that they're still sober, thank us. I got a text message this week from a client who's been out of sobriety court for approximately a year. and just said, I just want you to know how grateful I am for everything that you did for me and my kids. This is a grown woman who really was struggling with addiction and alcoholism, who had her relationship with her children had drastically changed as a result of her disease, and she was able to repair and do those things. So things like that are small successes where she reached out and just said, I hope you have a great day.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Outstanding.
you too. And that just is very touching and heartwarming. Another story that I can think of that also happened this week, we had a new client, a very young client who is very new to sobriety court, and she was in for her probation meeting, and I was talking to her about her search for a sponsor. So all of our clients are required to work a 12-step program and work with a sponsor.
Okay, and just for our audience, and for my
Yeah.
edification, a sponsor is responsible for or doing.
A sponsor is responsible for assisting someone through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, or there are other 12-step programs that are not specifically AA.
Now, can I be a sponsor if alcoholism is not my issue, so to speak? Can I still be a sponsor or not?
Unless you are struggling with some other form of addiction,
Right, okay.
to another drug, you could be a sponsor,
Gotcha.
but not if
Not
you're
a-
just out in the community.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
All right, makes sense.
it is exclusive, and they would have had to work the steps in the past.
Okay.
So this young client that came in, I was talking to her about her sponsor search, and she said, and I said, we were just talking about things to look for, and these are the things that you might want to look for in a sponsor, and this is all very new to her, and she's nervous, and she doesn't understand, how to approach people, and I'm not sure I'm making the right decision. So we were talking about it, and she said, well, I did go to this AA meeting on Saturday night, and the woman that was speaking, that was telling her story, it was an open meeting, so when that happens, people stand up and tell their story.
Okay.
It really spoke to me, and I liked the way she talked, I liked what she said, and her story really resonated with me. And I said, well, did you go up and talk to her after? And she said, no, I was embarrassed or shy about it. And I said, just out of curiosity, what was the person's name? And she told me the name, and it happened to be one of our sobriety court graduates.
Oh, wow.
So I said, well, lucky for you, I have her number. So as this probationer was in the office, I contacted our former client, who I had heard was still doing well, and still sober and still going to meetings. And I just said, hey, you made an impact on this sobriety court newbie. Do you mind if I give out your number? And she said, absolutely. We started catching up, and she's doing great. Her job is great. She's back in school.
Cool.
She's in a committed relationship, and just living a much better life than she had been living. And so who knows if that relationship will work out, but I did hear from our probationer that they have a date set for coffee so that at least they'll get to meet.
Cool.
So just things like that where we know that people are out there still giving back and are still living healthy lifestyles are really important. And we don't always see those successes, but we see them often. So we hear names of people all the time. I met so-and-so, and they said they graduated from sobriety court, and they're 4 years clean, those kinds of things. So we really hold on to those, because that's why we do the work that we do. So
Okay. Outstanding.
a couple examples.
So, and real quick,
Yes.
so at break we were talking, I asked you if there were any trends, ignore this court, in sobriety court, and you indicated that the ages seem to be dropping with regard to their participation, or having to be.
There are a ton of young people right now who have entered our sobriety court, but the trend happens to be, unfortunately, that young people are picking up more drunk driving offenses. So our population, we have quite a number of people between the ages of 18 and 23 right now that are participating in sobriety court. So, and even, in essence, very young adults, or what you might even consider still children, that have 2 drunk driving convictions and are under the legal age for even drinking alcohol.
Wow.
So that's pretty scary.
Yeah, that is alarming.
And a lot of times we find, based on their age and the time that they began using, brain development, there's a lot of skills that aren't there. So we know that we have a very intense program. It is difficult for people who are well established to sometimes navigate our systems and comply. But for someone who's 19, 20 years old that really hasn't had any responsibility and has been drinking or drugging for quite some time.
Yeah, I can only
They find it very difficult. So it's great to have those seasoned veterans that went through sobriety court. We really do actually rely on those people a lot. We have alumni panels, those kinds of things for our clients as well. So to have someone be willing to reach out to a newcomer, especially someone who's so young, and serve as a potential sponsor. I don't know if that will work out, but even just as a mentor or someone to be a listening ear to that person who really understands and says.
I want you to be thinking both about, before we come to you, is, because we've got about 3-4 minutes left, your very best piece of advice for somebody that may be watching, that something that you have said has resonated with them, that there may be a problem with a loved one or themselves or somebody, but your best piece of advice for them at this point. And then we'll go to you, Jen, if you would, with the same question.
I was just going to follow up with what you were saying about Keith, who was your guest.
Yes.
And the fact that he said, okay, I picked up whatever number it was, drunk driving, but I had to get through these hoops to start drinking again.
Sure.
Well, we obviously have people that come into sobriety court that are in that mindset as well, and that still attempt to do that while they're on probation. So we know that, and it doesn't work out well. Doesn't mean they're out of the program or anything like that, but we have people that try different things. We know that people do not come in to sobriety court and change overnight, so it's a process. So I'm not exactly sure where I was going with that.
I like that. Very, very honest, very flowing. Okay, so I'm going to come back to you with a wisdom thing. The best piece of advice you would have for somebody that is watching the same question that I have for the judge here. Okay, Judge, what did you come up with? The best piece of advice?
Is that you can't change that person. You can become educated, which is very important, whether it's through Al-Anon meetings or finding somebody else you know who's been through it and talk to them. But you will make yourself crazy and codependent by simply trying to change the other person, because they're going to change on their own schedule. And there are things you can do personally. You can say, okay, I'm not going to be with you anymore. You're not going to work here anymore. You're going to go to jail. And so you can provide consequences if they don't change, and then if they don't change, you have to follow through. But you can't flip the switch on the other person, and hiding alcohol from them isn't going to work. Being nicer to them isn't going to work. Spending less time with them isn't going to work. Getting them to get some sort of treatment for their alcoholism, that's what's going to work. And you can help with that, but you can't do it. You can't change people.
Very good advice. Excellent. Jen?
I would say that there is help available. So for people that might identify that they have a problem, this is a great community to be in. Sure. Tons of resources for families and friends that are dealing with people who are struggling with addiction as well. And it's out there. So.
Yeah, no, you're right about. I mean, if there's a community rich in resources on a number of levels, it's definitely in this city.
Right.
So, now usually I give a tip of the day at this point. That's how we close the show. Tip of the day. So I'm going to put it on one of you. Tip of the day. It doesn't matter. It has to be. It has to be relevant. I mean, I can't.
Sorry.
But something tip of the day, and Anyhow, do either one of you have a tip of the day that you'd like to leave the folks? If you do, look in this camera and just give them the tip of the day.
Don't drink and drive.
You heard it here, folks. Actually, that is good.
Good one.
Thank you so much. Judge?
You're welcome. It's good to see you again.
Jen?
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being on the show. That concludes our show of Arbor Shield. And next time, I'm not sure what we'll do, but I do appreciate both the guests.
It likely won't be this entertaining.
No, I'm sure it's not, Judge. I mean.
Are we going to get called back for a second?
Don't be surprised. 2020 data.
Right.
Anyhow, thanks for watching, folks, and we'll catch you next time in Arbor Shield. Thanks so much.